up next, we still have very exciting things. We're going now to have a panel discussion called Youth Leading the Way with Alumni Stories, where we will get to hear from some previous Global Youth Mobilization grant awardees about their experience. For this, I would like to welcome Sasha Ray Thomas, who will moderate this panel. And she's a Global Youth Mobilization board member as a youth representative for the World Association of the Girl Guides and Girl Scouts. And also she has experience during the first phase of Global Youth Mobilization as a youth panelist, where she's been reviewing applications. Sasha, over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sasha, and I will be your moderator for this panel discussion. I am a youth representative for the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts on the Global Youth Mobilization Board. I am a 21-year-old Ranger Guide, a global advocacy champion for wives, and a Duke of Edinburgh Bronze Awardee, currently studying veterinary medicine. I was part of the GYM Phase 1 as a youth panelist on the Education and Technology panel. So I'm excited to moderate this panel discussion for you today. Each of our speakers applied, received funding, and successfully implemented their projects. Let me introduce you to Luis Alvarado from Venezuela. His project, Human Building Bridges, was focused on peace building. Halima Nyota from Kenya. Her project, Mazingira Bora Initiative in Ikolomeni, focused on climate and job creation. Saj Mulatto from the Philippines. His project, the Neighborhood Parent Support Initiative, was focused on education. Welcome, everyone. A reminder, if you have any questions for our panel or the application process, we will have time to ask them at the end of our panel discussion. Please post them in the Q&A function. So let's dive in. Can each of you please introduce yourself and briefly introduce your funded project? Let's start with Luis.
Hi, everyone. Good morning from this part of the world. Good afternoon for most of you. My name is Luis. I'm from Venezuela. I'm currently based in Caracas. And I'm the founder of a non-governmental organization called Vazalo Foundation in Venezuela, where we work in communities affected by violence. I'm a facilitator of community-based dialogue processes, and in the project, we presented to the Global Youth Mobilization Fund a couple of years ago. We were able to develop and to implement community-based dialogue processes in communities affected by violence, and we started processes of social cohesion and strengthening and community development. We were selected for, first of all, for the local solution grant. So we were awarded with a $1,500 in the first cycle, but then the project was so successful that we were selected for the accelerator program that was mentioned about before, and we had the opportunity to have like bigger grant of up to $15,000. Thank you, and I'm more than happy to be here to also answer your question if you have any.
Sasha, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Luis. Now we would like to hear from Halima.
Okay, this is Halima Nyota from Kenya, and I am the Executive Director for Rising to Greatness Organization. The initiative for Mazingira Bora Initiative had the opportunity to be funded by Global Youth Mobilization. The first phase, we were given a seed grant of the local solution of $3,000 US, and our intervention was responding to existing climate change, impact of climate change along the gold supply chain of Ikolomani, Kenya, where we had experiences of landslide. And because it was in the COVID period, so many young people had sought to do mining, artisanal gold mining, as their only economic activity for surviving during the economic crisis that emerged from the pandemic. But in the same process, we had climate in climate change issues that both emanated from the gold mining activities that resulted to deaths of young people through landslides. And our intervention was trying to support issues of rehabilitation of gold mining sites and supporting youth and young women to be able to design sustainable mining or platforms that respond to climate change. So our grant gave us 3,000 US dollars as the first local solution. And from the impact we created and the emerging needs that emerged from the continuous engagement with young people within the community, we had the opportunity to receive the accelerator grant that amounted to 15,000 US dollars, which gave us a lot of impact again that opened us doors to further fundings. And right now we have like 3 other funded projects beyond Global Youth Mobilization Fund. So for us, it was the beginning of those two opportunities that young people can lead change at the community level. Thank you.
Thank you, Halima. Now, let's hear from Saj.
Hello, everyone from Southeast Asia. Hope everyone is having a good morning / evening. I'm Saj, a social entrepreneur from the Philippines, and my initiative was quite straightforward. We lacked support systems for education here in the Philippines during COVID-19. So the initiative simply provided what's needed the most. Supplementary educational services, aka tutorial services, to primary school learners here in the country. Just to give you a bit of our impact numbers, we were able to support over the course of 2 years the education of over 2,500 young students from very underprivileged communities. We were also able to transform almost 1,000 non-readers into readers over the course of 2 summers. And we did a major partnership with the government, which is why the project's actually still ongoing as of now. We're quite happy with that. We received an initial grant of 3,000 US dollars. And we also became eligible for the accelerator program, if I remember correctly, where we received an additional 15 or 20, I really can't remember, $1,000. And then, yeah, that's what catapulted us into the education sector. My company didn't do education up until the pandemic, but now we're quite heavily invested in it. We were able to land a big partnership with the US government through USAID. And we're heavily involved in education now. So it's part of our portfolio now. So I'm very happy to be here, excited to give feedback, and would love to give back to the community. If you guys have any concerns, questions, I'm going to say it now. Please feel free to send an email or message me directly. That's it.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I'm very happy to see that you saw an issue in your community and acted upon it by creating such wonderful projects. It was fantastic to hear about the success of your projects and how these fit against the selection criteria Yen walked us through earlier. Now, we will now move to our second question for the panel. What was the highlight from your participation in the first phase of the Global Youth Mobilization, and what did you learn? So we're going to start with Halima this time.
So one thing I'll say that as a young person who had an organization working in the community, and I had never received funding before the Global Youth Mobilization funding. So the fact that GYM opened an opportunity for young people to access resources, for me, it was a very great milestone. The 3,000 first seed grant was actually a huge milestone for us, because we're like, actually, we have been having ideas, but we've struggled receiving funding. And then that gave us a motivation to keep pushing, to keep working within the community, saying that at least with this funding, we can show the world that our statements gonna show that we have received resources, but also we can create more impact within the community. And then the second highlight is in preparation for the accelerator funding, we had a lot of capacity building programs on how to design an effective project, how to manage resources, do reporting, and comparing the local solution and the accelerator. With the local solution, we do not focus on documentation. And we always say that if your initiative is not documented, it is good as it has never existed. So the accelerator resources enabled us to document each and every engagement we had at the community, including the financial documentation, which for us, it was an opportunity that built individual capacity of the team, but also it built the organization system and strengthening, which is a basic requirement for any donor to give you resources. But the fact that GYM gave us resources without questioning our systems, they just believed in our ideas and believed that young people can deliver. For us, that was the biggest highlight. And from the process, we have been able to build capacity both at the individual level and the organization level, which now is opening more doors to us as young people and as organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Halima. Now let's hear from Saj.
Thank you. So I briefly touched about a bit that education wasn't really our forte before entering the pandemic. Uh, More than anything, it was quite a humbling experience because prior to venturing into education, our main thrusts were civic participation, public-private partnerships, and social entrepreneurship. But the moment we stepped into that field, I realized that it's difficult for you to upskill people and to train people on the more complex things like playing your role in the leadership of their communities if they can't even read the law. So a couple of things like basic education that totally skipped my mind before jumping into this sector were quite eye-opening. And I think that is what has deepened my commitment to the different advocacy sectors we're part of. And that is why I'm now a firm and very staunch advocate of early education. How even just something as simple as a basic education, a lot of people with privilege from around the world take for granted. It's a huge thing in terms of social mobility for a lot of other people. So it was a great experience. It opened my eyes to a bunch of new issues and topics that I never thought I would be part of. But at the same time, I think it was meant to happen eventually, and I'm glad that it happened as early as it did.
Thank you. Now let's hear from Luis.
Thank you. Like anytime I think about the Global Youth Mobilization Experience and my local solution accelerator program project, I think all the amazing resources that the Global Youth Mobilization gave us access to. Like I think that after or with the support of the Global Youth Mobilization, our capacities to do project management gets much better because of all the mentorship, all the session, but also all the templates for project management that was shared with us. Because you cannot imagine how difficult it is to start from the scratch, like creating like all the project management framework, and the Global Youth Mobilization Fund gave us access to it, and that was like a amazing resource. But also, and like also this mentorship with like-minded individuals, with people who have a lot of experience on the field, um, who supported us through all the process and make us feel that we were not alone in the project implementation. And one of other things I would like to highlight is that the other opportunities that Global Youth Mobilization Fund gave us access to, because I have the opportunity to speak on the World Health Organization in 2022, and having this opportunity to show my project, to highlight what we were doing, and that's something that you cannot have access to very easily. And Global Youth Mobilization, as part of this big partnership of the Big Six organization and also the European Union in this case, give you access to a lot of resources and a lot of opportunities. And something I learned from the Global Youth Mobilization Fund is that there is ways to make it different. It's possible to make it in a different way. I know that we all work on project implementation, field-led organization, etc. And we know how hard is to find a call for application, a call for grant that fit for our purpose, and how hard we have to, how hard we struggle to feed our project and our purpose as an organization with a grant application. And one of the things I really like from the Global Field Mobilization Fund is the flexibility that exists that allows you to develop your own idea. You here have the 16 SDGs, and that's very, very wide. So, you know, you can apply with your idea. You don't have to force it. You could develop actually what you want.
Thank you for that. Now, thank you everyone for your responses. And now it's time for our third and final question for each of you. And we will start this time with Saj and then Luis and then Halima. So the question is, what would your advice be for a young person considering applying? What are your top tips for developing a successful grant application?
I'm first, right?
Yes, you
Okay.
are.
So for these kinds of things, I know it's quite intimidating for a lot of people here who are starting out in the sector and this will be their first grant. My first advice to anyone starting out in this space is don't try to change the world just yet. Focus on changing your community, yourself, and the people around you, creating small, localized impact. As much as, you know, I want people to be ambitious, you can't change the world with $1,500. You have to, but you can start changing the world with $1,500, $3,000, you know. Focus on a local issue that's close to your heart, something that you possibly even experience on a daily basis. It doesn't have to be something that's complicated, something that's out there. Just focus on what you see around you immediately, and that gives you a better understanding, a more fundamental understanding of the issue that you want to work on, and you can start from there. You know, if the advocacy really sinks in with you, you can apply for the accelerator program if your program does really well. And if it doesn't work, you know, there's always an opportunity to try something else moving forward. You know, never stop trying. The one thing that really drives people forward in this sector more than brilliance, I think, is persistence. If you really see yourself as somebody who's passionate about creating change in your community or even the world, uh, find your niche, find your place, and keep going forward. That's it.
Thank you, Luis.
Yeah, I think adding to what Sash mentioned, I will say, allow yourself to dream big, but act small and keep it very simple and be very realistic with what your objective and your activities will be. I think sometimes the system of funding could be very unfair and maybe push you to show up many things, like for you to demonstrate that you will change the world with a few amount of money in order to receive it. But this is not the case here. Like, I think that the Global Field Mobilization Fund doesn't want heroes, but wants more impactful, localized project proposals and very realistic. So, um, so be a hero, but keep it simple, like dream big, but act small, and be aware about the deadline. I think that's very important. And send your project proposal in advance. Don't wait until the end of the call for application. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. Halima.
Some key highlights. I will tell every young person to be organic with the idea, so that sometimes when you want to develop an idea, you want to go to the internet and then copy and paste. Choose what works for your community. Like, take the issue that is affecting the young people within your community, the lived realities of young women, young men, the marginalized groups as far as their age is concerned. And then I'm sure that there is no wrong idea. Every young person has the right idea that can attract resources. And whatever idea you have been passionate about, that thing that you have been pushing for change, either in your head, it is now the right time for you to step out of your head and start doing the idea you've been thinking about. And I'm happy that the application process is not as complicated as other funding proposals are. So this is a very easy process, and the website it will walk you through to midwife your idea. If you go to the Global Youth Mobilization site, it will actually help in midwifing your idea and ensuring that you are able to write the best proposal. And then something else is start your application early. Don't be a last minute person. So think through, and sometimes for me what helped me is I could copy the questions to a Word document and then work them through and then just come back to copy and paste. It helps you think, and sometimes you can work with fellow young people as much as you're the one leading. Consult with the young people so that they tell you what their issue is, so that you don't imagine what is affecting young people in your community and then come back and write, so that when it comes to implementation you start struggling. And my last thought is when doing application, right now we are talking about SDGs. Connect the issue that is affecting with the young people with specific SDGs. And SDGs are very intersectional. There is how zero hunger and poverty affects good health and well-being. So try to think through how does different SDGs interconnect with each other as far as your issue is concerned. And if you have questions, the platform is very easy to navigate through. Thank you so much. And I'll be available for questions or for anything.
Thanks, Halima. Thank you, everyone, for your responses. And advice that I would give from the perspective of being on the panel reviewing, please make your application as unique as possible, but don't give long statements or so. We love to hear your story. We love to read, but when you're reading a long paragraph going down like a whole book you're reading, it sometimes it makes you lose track of the what are you asking for, what is the initiative, so you can kind of lose track in that. So as was said earlier, the bullet points are very important as they get right to the point and provide us with just enough information that would deem us fit to make the decision to fund your project. And then another thing is budgeting. That's very important as well, because when you give a detail to your budget, it doesn't have to be too detailed, but once you can show where the money is being allocated, it gives us an idea that you know exactly what you're doing and how you want the money to be spent. So that's a good way for us to see too if it's good. If the project is good, and the project will be sustainable, because that's what's important, that it can be sustained, that it's a good initiative, and that it can be carried on, not for just a one-time thing, but it can be something that can be seen in the future. So thank you all for sharing, and we will now move to our question and answer section for the panel. Also joining us to answer questions is Peaks Fawn. Peaks Fawn is the senior co-lead youth-led solutions for the GYM project coordination team. Welcome. We will now be taking these questions from our question and answer function. So please make sure if you have a question to post it here. So now let's see. Okay. So the first question I see to the panel, so any of you can answer if you wish. What are the different ways in which the project can be youth-led?
Okay, can I go? Do you want me to jump in? Okay, first of all is youth-led. The person who is submitting the application, there is specified age in terms of what youth means, the specification in terms of age. The aspect of youth-led is the issue that you are presenting to address. It has, for me, how I took it, it has to be affecting the young people, the marginalized group of the young people at the largest percentage. But also in terms of youth involvement, most of the time we write initiatives and take young people as beneficiaries and not as equal partners. So your project need to highlight how are you going to involve young people within your project? How are you going to ensure that young people contribute to achieving the goal of your project and not necessarily considering them as people to receive, to be the project participant.
Oh, I think we might have lost Halima. Did anyone else on the panel want to add anything to that question?
Yeah, I would suggest for you to think about the project cycle, like from project design to like project monitoring and evaluation and all the process of a project. Think about how few can be involved in this. So, for example, in project design, are you a young person designing the proposal, of course, but are you also consulting other young people to make sure that the problem you are trying to address is actual a problem for not only for you, but for a wider community of young people? And are the young people in the center of the response in your project? Like, are there partners? Are you partnering with other youth-led organization? Who is um, the project implementation team is formed by young people. How are young people being into consideration, taken into consideration when you do the monitoring and evaluation plan, or when you think about communication, and yeah, like that's like the kind of my recommendation for you.
Thank you. Saj, would you like to answer as well? Do you
I
have
think,
any?
I think Luis answered it perfectly.
Okay, no problem. Yes, go ahead. Okay, so thank you for answering. Our next question, this will be directed to Peak. What are the different ways? Oh, no, sorry. Right, can you tell us more about the focus on climate and what kind of projects could this include?
Hi, sorry about the delay. I was busy looking at the answering the questions in the Q&A box. Thank you for all your vibrant, very interesting questions. I'll try my best to answer all of them. So going back to this question about special focus. Now, what does that mean, special focus? Now, just like what Ying explained, we will fund any project that aims to advance any one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, okay? However, we have special focus, which means that we prioritize projects that addresses climate change, and we also prioritize projects that are from and for underrepresented communities. Now, as Ying explained in her presentation earlier, underrepresented communities here refer to people who usually don't get a voice in the mainstream, and this includes people with disabilities, or those living in rural areas, or those who come from low-income backgrounds, right? Those are examples of underrepresented communities. And we also have a special focus for projects that address climate change. Now, these include projects such as projects that reduce carbon emissions, projects that promote renewable energy, or they encourage sustainable practices, or they enhance biodiversity. So these are projects that we will be interested to fund. Hope that clarifies.
Thank you. You answered 2 questions in one go. Amazing. So the next question is, how did you come up with your project ideas? So that would be directed to both Luis and Saj. So Saj, you can go first this time.
you mind repeating the question? I was answering something in the comments.
Okay, no problem. The question is, how did you come up with your project idea?
Oh, okay. As with most initiatives that I end up in, was a complete accident. So because of the because of the COVID lockdown, my full-time staff and I had nothing to do. So I approached some of our government partners and I was like, hey guys, do you want free labor? What do you what do you want us to do for you? And one of the local executives actually said like there's this big educational initiative that's being started. You might want to take the lead on it for our region. And I'm like, okay, cool. I have nothing nothing better to do with my life than play video games and not even work. So sure, let's do it. And here we are. We started the initiative. We got, we were able to scale it. And we did some impact. We're pretty happy with the results. So that's how it started. We just wanted to find a way to do something for the community while we had a lot of downtime, and it naturally fell into place. So I think the opportunity actually did present itself for us to do something great for our community, jokes aside. So yeah, that's it. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, I believe it does. Thank you. Luis?
Yeah, in my case, we have to think about the context of COVID-19 and the lockdown and all the what happened during those years. In my particular context, COVID-19 um, also brought a lot of local conflicts regarding to access to resources, um, because the public infrastructure was very damaged. My country is facing a humanitarian crisis since 2016, and then the COVID-19 came, and um, like there were a lot of violence in the communities regarding to having access to health, but also having access to food security and having access to a quality of life. So lockdown looks very, very different depending on where you are and yeah, where you live. So with all the things that were happening there, we the main idea was to promote and encourage young people and young participation into the discussion of civic topics. And then this civic topic gets more focused on peace building, because when all this thing was happening, the trust in institutions, the trust in everything and everyone was just missing. So there was a lot of lack of trust in the context, and this lack of trust became uh, how can I say, like lead to more violence. So we started processes of young people taking the floor, taking the opportunity to talk about civic topics, get them engaged back in this conversation, and specifically promoting peace building in communities affected by this violence.
Okay, thank you, Luis. So now we can go over to our next question. What challenges this is again a question for both of you. What challenges did you face in your project and how did you overcome them? Any of you can start. Or we can start with or both of you are thinking, okay.
I can start.
Okay, good.
I'll give Luis some more time. So the situation with the lockdown in the Philippines was that all educational institutions pretty much closed down. So all students had to only go to school twice a week. It was on Monday and Friday, and it was just for like an hour time slot. All they did was pick up their packet of modules that they take home, and then they submit it on Fridays, and the process repeats itself. Now, the biggest problem for this is the fact that there's a big section of the population in the country that are quite behind in terms of literacy. So how do you realistically expect people that are unable to read, especially young students, to answer written modules if they can't even read, right? And I think the problem was quite pervasive because these people come from low-income families, and more than regular, the parents or their parents or even their siblings are also not educated, quote unquote. So it's virtually impossible for them to answer the modules, to receive the right guidance in order for them to know what they're supposed to be learning. So, they just pick whatever answer that they wanted and just for the sake of submission, right? So the problem was there was a huge gap in the system with how we can actually provide sufficient education despite the circumstances in the country. So what we proposed was a very straightforward initiative. We had a lot of vacant public schools, a lot of classrooms that weren't being utilized. We leveraged our existing tie-ups with the government from our previous initiatives. We got the right permits, the right partners, the right documentation, and all of those things to begin operating and begin conducting face-to-face tutorial sessions. So we didn't just support students, we also supported teachers that didn't have jobs. Through a tie-up with the government, we were able to provide, at the very least, minimum wage to more than 300 teachers. So that also helped them get by during the pandemic, which was extremely difficult for professions just that. And that's how the initiative started. We started with one site, which we primarily used to fund using government funding and with a boost from GYM. And after about 6 months, we received additional grants from our other partners from the international community. And that's pretty much what helped us scale the project up until we got to the accelerator program, which was towards the tail end of the pandemic, which gave us the necessary funding to finish 2 years of implementing the program. We then made our exit from the project, and the government is still continuing the program itself in the locality where we implemented the program. So that's a brief history of how the project started versus how it ended for us. Yeah.
In our case, well, I was telling before that our project was implemented under pandemic time. So there was a lot of uncertainty when the actual implementation happened. So one of the things we did to face this challenge was to take it easy and don't go in a rush when it comes to the implementation. So we could have enough time, to make decisions and so what planning activities like what we're going to do, because not all of our activities were virtually based, where we had activities like in the ground, because we were working actually with communities that most of them doesn't have access to internet. So what we did just to, okay, so let's bring this reflected approach to the project implementation, and let's reflect a lot about what is happening and how we're going to operate. So what that was the thing, like during the project implementation, having the ability to get up in the balcony and see the wider picture about what is happening, and taking your time to make decisions and go slowly, don't be in a rush during project implementation. If this is a project you really love, this is a project you don't really want it, just to implement it and finish it. Just wanted to do it and do it well, or the best as possible. So the other challenge we faced was related to I also told before about the lack of trust that there was in that context, of pandemic. So of course we were not a section, and we was a challenge to gain the trust of the communities, and this is what we spent a good amount of time working on that. We create informal spaces to talk with communities, and we introduce ourselves to the communities, like very honest, we just gave them all the information about the project, who was the founders, who was involved in this, what was the goal, because also in that context, other risk we face or other challenge is that working with communities affected by violence and in the context of a pandemic, we have the risk and the challenge to be targeted as a political actor, um, bringing assistance, working with communities, and so on. So how we did and how we faced this challenge was to keep an objective, youth-led focus speech on all our communication, and having like a very institutional and organizational communication, way to express what we were doing, being very aware about what messages we were telling the communities, what messages we were spreading in the social media, because it was a very like kind of polarized environment where, well, being targeted as a political actor could dismiss our work, that was not like connected with the reality. So that was some of the challenges we faced. Oh, and sorry, and I want to mention also this because it could be like a motivation for you. A challenge for us was regarding to the sustainability, because we really love this project. The project we started, Human Building Bridges. So what we did during project implementation was to also look for other opportunities that could help us to continue implementing the project after the support of the Global Youth Mobilization Fund. So we had a lot of opportunities, like part of the team, the project team were able to go to Morocco and present the project to the United Nations Alliance of Civilization. We did a lot of work with also the Johns Hopkins University was interested, and the support of the communities and other actors has been so important in this that we are currently planning to register Human Building Bridges, not having it like just a project, but having it like an organization in the US. Like this project has have grown so much, and all this was thanks to the support of the Global Youth Mobilization Fund. So don't stop looking for opportunities that allow you to grow your project and to build on what you will be starting.
Thank you, Luis. And now we have Bat Halima, so I will let you answer this question as well. What challenges did you face in your project and how did you overcome them? Halima, can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you. So unfortunately, the internet did humble me, so I could not have gotten the question. So it's the question that my colleagues have been responding to.
Okay, the question was, what challenges did you face in your project and how did you overcome them?
Okay, first of all, being young and being a young woman for that matter, that is how the community perceives that you cannot push change. So the aspect of community entry was a good challenge in the beginning, going to the community and telling the community, because in Kenya, before you start an engagement, you have to go to the community structures, the local administration, telling them that this is an initiative, you want to work with young people. So the first thing they're looking at you and they're like, you're a young woman, what do you have? Do you have even the financial capacity? Do you have the knowledge it requires? So the aspect of doubt, that being young means not knowing things and not being able. The second thing is when we started engagement now, there was a wide interest, like so many young people who are doing artisanal mining, and artisanal mining is super wide within my community, that we have more than, in one administration area, we have more than 300 mining sites. And looking at the level of funding, which was the first grant was 3,000, and you have very few activity with very few activities because of budget. And now every mining site wants you to go and have a session. So of course, it was a challenge in itself that opened an opportunity to present to global youth mobilization the need as to why we needed more resources. And I'm happy that the challenge was equally responded to. Another thing is the administration. Like, there is how when you're engaging with when you're implementing an intervention, there is the aspect where you need to engage the local government. The bureaucracies that comes with engaging different government ministries, it creates a challenge that today you have established. By the time we're starting local solution, we had an established with maybe the Minister of Environment, we had a focal contact person, and by the time the accelerator grant is coming, that person you had built relationship with has been transferred to a different ministry. So you have to start again building another relationship. So what taught us going forward was to establish MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding with different key partners and key ministries, so that by any chance there is a transfer to a different ministry, you have a memorandum of understanding to ensure that you have a relationship with this office and there is need for continued engagement. Above all, within this space, resources are never enough. The struggle for limited resources is also a good challenge, because as you work with the community, you will find that you are working on climate change. There is now an emerging issues of women being exploited within the mining sector. So you have again to redesign an intervention that addresses an emerging issue, maybe on sexual abuse and exploitation. So issues will keep coming, and probably you don't have the resources, you don't have maybe the knowledge, expertise in that field. So it demanded that we keep learning, we be open, we become the students of life to learn on each and every issue, because society has a lot of wide issues, but also create an opportunity for partnership and collaboration with those who have been in the space already working, but also opening up windows to learn with other partners and to collaborate in order to create more impact and to reach as many young people as we could. Thank you.
Thank you, Halima. Now, that wraps up our panel discussion and Q&A session. We hope that it has been valuable for you. And I do encourage those of you who are listening, I hope that this session was informative, and I hope to see a lot of you register and apply for the grant application. And I wish everyone all the best. And thank you again to our panelists for your contribution today. I will now hand back to Flo, our MC for the session.